Thank you all for joining us for what I think is going to be a very, very interesting discussion tonight. Let me thank the workers who participated in that video and our great panelists who are with us this evening, and you're going to hear from them in a few moments. I don't have to tell anybody that we're living in crazy times. We're in the midst of this terrible pandemic. So many of our people have lost their jobs and their income. We're worried about climate change. We're worried about systemic racism. We're worried about so many things. But tonight, what we're going to be asking are questions like, how does it happen that in the richest country in the history of the world, half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, while the billionaires are doing phenomenally well? Does that make any sense to any of you? How does it happen that our great country, in our great country, we have millions of workers who are earning starvation wages? And you just heard that on the video. You know what? You can't make it on 10 or 12 bucks an hour. You can't pay your rent. You can't feed your kids. You can't take care of yourselves. How does it happen that the United States of America, our great nation, is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right, while we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as any other nation, and 90 million people are uninsured or underinsured? How does it happen that today, in the midst of a pandemic, because the Republican leadership in the Senate refused to pass a COVID emergency relief bill, that all across America today, unbelievably, families are struggling in America to put food on the table? They're worried about getting evicted from their homes. They're unable to go to the doctor when they get sick because they have lost their health insurance. So what tonight's discussion is about is hearing from workers themselves, hearing from Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris about her plans and Joe Biden's plans about how we are going to go forward and improve the lives of tens of millions of working families that are hurting today. So again, in the midst of everything that's going on, we talk about Trump and what crazy thing he may have said yesterday or today. But we are not talking enough about the specific policies that we need to improve the lives of tens of millions of people in this country who are in desperate economic condition. So I think what we're going to hear tonight is why we need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. We're going to be hearing about why we need to end the absurdity of women making 80 cents on the dollar compared to men, because they're not being paid equally for the work they're doing. The absurdity of so many of our people who are working 40 hours a week still can't afford health insurance. The absurdity of so many of our young kids not being able to afford to go to college or are leaving school deeply in debt. So tonight we're going to focus on the economic pain that so many people in our country are experiencing. And we're going to talk about how in this great nation, with a Democratic president and vice president, with a Democratic Senate, we are finally going to stand up to powerful special interests. We're going to deal with income and wealth inequality, and we're going to create an economy that works for all, not just the few. And with that, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce a friend of mine, a fellow United States Senator from the state of California, one of the leading voices in the U.S. Senate, and somebody I know who is going to be a great vice president of the United States. Please welcome Kamala Harris. Kamala, thanks so much for being with us.
Bernie, it's good to see you, and it's great to be with you. You're amazing. Bernie is an extraordinary leader, and one of the, I think, marks of a great leader is someone who requires a country, especially a national leader, to require a country to look in the mirror and ask itself, is it doing everything it's capable of doing? Bernie is someone who has challenged every premise and required people who are knowledgeable people to defend the premise, which has been the basis of their opinions for a lifetime. And in many ways, when he does that, one sees that the premise is a bit flawed. Bernie has been someone who, you know, look at with that mischievous grin. He knows what he's doing, though, because the thing about you, Bernie, also is that you decided to do it from inside the system, but to challenge everyone every single day from inside the system. I do believe that on that debate stage that you and I shared for almost a year in the primary, that the majority of those debates would not have been on the topic of healthcare in America if it were not for a discussion that you prompted and the way you challenged the status quo and are thinking about what is possible and what the American people are prepared for and what they want. And so in front of all of the friends, I want to thank you, Bernie Sanders, for what you have done, what you continue to do, and you really are a treasure. So thank you.
I don't want to make this a love fest. But
well, but you know what? How often do I get in front of everybody to say these things?
well, thank you. And
Leave
let me just say in response.
I'm going to move on now.
All right. Now I'm going to ask you those tough questions. You ready?
Ask me, yes.
All right. But before that, I do want to say, you know, when you are in the Senate and the Democratic caucuses, Kamala and I are, we go behind closed doors often for very private meetings, no media, et cetera, et cetera. And what I do want to say to our viewers out there, I have seen Kamala behind closed doors, and I've seen the passion and the decency that she expresses and her willingness to fight for people today who do not have a voice. So Kamala, I want to thank you very much for the great work you've done. All right, let me throw it out to you.
Yes.
Simply, I think that in this campaign, you know, we talked about Trump's craziness every day and all the weird things he does. We have not talked enough about, frankly, what our agenda is. You and Joe get elected, God willing. What are you guys going to be doing to help the tens of millions of working people in this country who are living in economic desperation? What's the agenda out there?
Right. So, and I really appreciate you framing it that way, because enough of talking about that guy. Let's just move on to what we're going to actually get done. So, I mean, first of all, we cannot overlook in any way the big thing in front of us, which is the impact of this pandemic on the economy and on working people. But in so many ways, Bernie, I think that the pandemic has really been an accelerator, meaning it has, for folks who were doing badly before, they're doing even worse now. And it has then put a magnifier on the inequities that have long existed. For example, the inequity, the injustice, the immorality of not paying all workers sick leave, not giving paid sick leave, not giving paid family leave to all workers. The injustice of that has been highlighted in a way that for the first time, perhaps some people have realized that if that worker does not have paid sick leave, it will impact me. And, you know, so however we get there, but let this be a moment of reckoning then, that as a country, that is part of what has been flawed that we need to fix. Joe and I are committed to paid sick leave and paid family leave.
Let me interrupt you and ask you this question, and I know you know the answer, and the viewers know the answer. How many major countries on earth do not provide paid family and medical leave to their workers?
Of the so-called advanced countries, I don't know of one.
No, there is none. We are it.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing from you that you and Joe are going to lead us to end that international embarrassment.
We have to end it. And it's not only an embarrassment, it's morally wrong. Because here's the thing also, and this is a piece that, you know, you talk about premises. You have to understand, working people have ethics. They take their work seriously. They take pride in the work they do, and they deserve to have dignity that comes with working a hard day. And that includes when they get sick, being able to stay home. When they have a parent or a child who needs attention, being able to stay home to care for them, knowing that they're going to do that because that is a necessity at that moment, and they will get back to work when they can. But there's something about, we see this across the board, right? Which is, we see this even when you and I and all of us have been fighting for SNAP benefits, right? For SNAP benefits, we used to call it food stamps. Why do people need SNAP benefits? Because they're hungry. And then there is a suggestion we have heard in certain circles, well, if you extend this, they won't know what to do with the money, because there is also this ugly premise that people who are low income or poor choose to be that way, or don't have the same ethics everyone else has, or are irresponsible. And this is part of what's wrong with the way we have crafted economic policy when it comes to what is just right and morally right on a global scale. Our audio, the platform, in addition to just what's right within our own hearts and minds about treating workers with dignity and respect. Minimum wage. I mean, you said the point of it, and also pay equity. It is still the case that women are not paid the same amount as men for the same work. And then when you start looking at Black women, Latinas, Native women, the numbers are even more stark.
Right.
And let's look at when we just increased minimum wage to $15 an hour, 1 in 3 women will benefit, 1 in 3 Latinos will benefit, 4 in 10 Black workers will benefit. And you and I both know, by the way, raising the minimum wage is about the floor, not the ceiling. But it is what we need to do to at least move this thing forward and pay people the value of their work.
So what I'm hearing from you, so I want everybody to hear it. You and Joe are committed to fighting for at least a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Yes, absolutely, yes. But
All right.
also,
Well,
fighting.
let me go to another area that
Yeah.
we need to talk about. Mom and dad go to work today. They can't find decent, quality, affordable childcare. What do you guys propose to do about that?
No family should pay more than 7% of their income in child care, period. Again, and this is about addressing also, the hypocrisies of it all. We say we care about families. Every person running for office will talk about they're a family person, they care about families. Well, families need assistance paying for childcare when we have seen that, first of all, the cost of living has gone up across the board while wages have remained stagnant. When we see that in many places we're looking at childcare deserts, or we're looking at childcare being in some places more expensive than college.
That's right.
So these are the things that we have to do. And again, everyone benefits. Everyone benefits when any family has the ability to provide for the essential needs of the children in their home and of everybody in their home who needs that kind of assistance. But in addition, we're also going to put in place universal pre-K for 3 and 4-year-olds. And that, again, the studies are clear, and the human experience tells you when our youngest children have that, and we're not just talking about daycare, but actually education programs for our youngest children, they have a leg up. And, people who come from wealthy families have the resources to do that kind of thing anyway, but it should be available to all of our children, knowing they all have equal capacity to achieve whatever their dreams may be, but they don't have equal resources. And that, again, is the point of equity, not just equality.
Right. All right, Kamala, let me ask you this. I know you have heard in California on the campaign trail, young people who would love the opportunity to get a higher education from a working class family. They just can't afford it. What ideas do you and Joe have to make it easier for young people, or anybody for that matter, to be able to get a higher education? How are you going to deal with the level of student debt that we are seeing today?
Great. Any student coming from a family that makes less than $125,000 a year can attend a public 4-year college or university for free, including an HBCU, including a private HBCU or minority serving institution. In addition, so many of our bright minds, they graduate college with student loan debt, but they want to pursue a profession that is a profession of service, of public service. And so we also are committed for anyone who comes out of school and goes to a job that pays less than $125,000 a year, we'll erase their debt.
Wow.
Yeah, and because listen, and by the way, Bernie, this is not just about what is right to do to encourage our students, well, encouraging bright minds to pursue an education that will allow them to be productive and contribute to society, but it is also what we have the capacity to do to create economic stimulus. Because think about that. We're also looking at when we get rid of that debt, that student loan debt, that gives those students the ability to also take advantage of the fact that we're going to give a $15,000 tax credit to first-time home buyers for down payment and closing costs. So can you imagine the number of students that right now are coming out of college with student loan debt? They don't know if they'll ever be able to buy a home. They're questioning whether they can ever afford to have children, and what it would mean to create a much more productive environment if we relieve them of that debt if they go into jobs that don't pay more than $125,000.
Well, Kamala, I know you're going to have to run. You got other
5
things.
days, Bernie, 5 days.
And you're counting, I suspect, huh?
Yes, I am, brother.
All right, you're doing a great job. And I just want to summarize for all of the viewers out there. I don't think we have discussed it enough, but you heard Kamala outline briefly the Biden economic proposals and what it means for working families. This is no small thing. Raising the minimum wage is a wage increase to $15 an hour, a wage increase for 40 million workers, equal pay for equal work, creating millions of good paying jobs. We didn't get into this, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, making public colleges and universities tuition free for families under 125,000 and going a significant way to cancel student debt, universal childcare and pre-K for 3 and 4 year olds. This is an enormous step forward for working families and for the little children of our country. So I think when we go to vote, I know, it's one thing to be talking about Trump all of the time, that's fine. But it's another thing to be talking about what we have got to do to improve the lives of tens of millions of people who today are really, really hurting. And I just want to thank Kamala for the great campaign that she is running, and I look forward to working with her in the months and years to come. Kamala, thanks so much for being with us and for the work you're doing.
Thank you. You take care. See you soon.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Okay. Let me just pick up and close the program tonight by thanking all of our great panelists. It is, I'm sure people who are watching can understand that it is not easy for somebody, who's not a politician, not a professional speaker, to get up in front of hundreds of thousands of people and to talk about what's going on in his or her life. That's not easy. So I appreciate all of our panelists and all the people who are doing such important work for workers in this country. And I want to just pick up on a point that Mary Kay made, and to mention, I often, when I speak, I quote Nelson Mandela. And Mandela said something that I think is very, very profound and very timely. He said, and I quote, "Everything is impossible until it is done." In other words, people will tell you when you're engaged in a fight for decent wages, you're engaged in a fight for universal health care, you're engaged in a fight to make sure that all of our people can afford to go to college or have high quality, affordable childcare, or that we can create millions of good paying jobs. People say, no, you can't do it. You think, don't be ridiculous. That's not realistic. What's realistic is that a handful of billionaires own more wealth than the bottom half of America. What's realistic is that 500,000 Americans today sleep out on the streets. They're homeless. What's realistic is half our people work for, paycheck to paycheck and starvation wages. That's realistic. But I think what all of us are saying, we got to get out of that mindset. This is the richest country in the history of the world. People should not have to work 40 years in order to make $15 an hour, as Susie did, or not go to get the health care they need, as Chrissy was talking about, or try to survive on $11 an hour, as others have been talking about. So the goal here is to win this election and then to build a kind of political movement that we need to make sure that the Congress and the White House stand up for working families and not just the big money interests. And when we do that, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. All of the goals that we are talking about, universal health care, decent wages, paid family and medical leave, universal child care, they are not, despite what Trump and his friends will tell you, these are not radical ideas. They exist all over the world. I am 50 miles away tonight from Canada. Everybody in Canada can go to any hospital they want, any doctor they want. They don't take out their wallet. And the quality of care there is as good or better as it is in the United States. So we're not talking about anything radical. We're talking about human rights, human dignity. So we got 5 days left to go in this campaign. Please bring out your friends, your neighbors, your family, your coworkers. Let's get out and vote in state after state. This is going to be a very close election. You can make the difference and do it. Make the difference. Let's win this election for Joe, Kamala, and for all of us. And then let us come together to make sure that we create an economy and a government that works for all, not just the people on top. So let me thank all of the panelists. You did a great job. Let me thank Kamala Harris for being with us tonight. And let's go forward together, win the election, transform the country.